Talk with the clever native Greg Fann, the preacher man, and his sidekick Shannon Jones. Frank discussions of issues affecting the ATL, Fulton County, the state of Georgia, the nation, and around the world. And now, here they are, live and in living color, the team of Jones and Fann.
Well, here we are, Shannon and yours truly, Greg Fann, the preacher man. And Shannon is off. He's like Robin Rivers. He's not in New Zealand. He's in South Fulton. Hey, Shannon, how you doing today?
Don't be telling people where I live. The IRS might be looking for me.
Well, I already sent them your way. It's kind of late for that, my brother. How you doing today, man?
Oh, man, I'm fantastic of the fact that I forgot to come in the studio today.
Well, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Well, we're gonna have a great program today as always, and of course, we're gonna ask you guys. Always, you want to be a part of the program. You can do just like Shannon. You can stay where you are, and be able to be brought in and be on the program, or you can come directly into the studio with Shannon and myself. Well, today, Shannon, we're gonna have some very interesting topics. So much going on. There's police reform, the things that they're doing. And trying to reform the police department, and people talking about doing away with the police, and those are real issues that's driving the day. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to hear from Miss C. Is that all right with you?
That's all right with me. Let's hear from Miss C. That rhyme.
Miss C here with your 3-minute news blast or more. Hello, everybody. Listen, I'm coming from my kitchen. I saw Pastor Fann on TV. On YouTube with his wife. They were doing Bible study from the kitchen. So I thought I'd try the same thing and see how that works. Okay. I need to probably move the camera over a little bit there so he can get those announcements in. Okay, listen. Oh, hey, Pastor Shannon. Hey, Bishop Greg. Listen, I've got some tidbits of news that I think you can use. The 58th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, commemorating the Selma to Montgomery March and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, will be held March 5th, 2023, departing at 6 a.m. from the IBEW building on Pulliam Street, and they will return at 9:30 p.m. to the IBEW building on Pulliam Street. To get all the details, including about meals and a tour of the Legacy Museum, contact Cheney Ferris at 678-334-0058. That's 678-334-0058. The 35th church anniversary of the Temple of Prayer Family Worship Cathedral United Church of God in Christ will be held Sunday, February 12th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They also do global streaming, and that will begin at 10:15 a.m. on Facebook Live. Just go to facebook.com/TOPFWCUCOGIC. That's the acronym for Temple of Prayer Family Worship Cathedral United Church of God in Christ, in case you forget all those letters. Now, the Temple of Prayer you want to worship in person is located at 161 Sonoya Road in Fairburn, Georgia. And you are welcome to wear your favorite team jersey that Sunday. And the pastor is Bishop Aaron Lackey, Sr. Now, we've heard all about the recent storms and disasters and tornadoes, just plain bad weather, and a lot of people are affected, especially people with families. And you can do a lot to help. They need help cleaning up the debris. You may not think about it, but there are many places where people cannot clean up their own debris because they're sick or elderly or what, or just, totally distraught by this whole situation. And you can find some of those places out on the website, online. They have a lot of information about how to help. And babies need diapers. You probably don't think about it. yourself every day, but just think about mothers. Sometimes they can't go to work because their babies don't have diapers, and you have to take, I just found this out, you have to take the diapers to the daycare center. And you can give through a lot of different organizations. One I found was Must Ministries, and they're in Marietta. You can call them at 770-790-3902. That's 770-790-3902 for Must Ministries, and donate your diapers. And I went to a website, and it's the helpingmamas.org, and they had on there some information I found that it just touched my heart. 40% of low-income families have to choose between diapers and food for their children. And that just, and other facts on there, that just touched my heart. It disturbed me. I just, gosh, we just don't know how people are suffering, but we can all help. You can go online and you can donate to verifiable charities, and they'll tell you how, there are other websites that can tell you how to help. So let's do what we can to help other people. It's really important. Now listen, I want you to do 4 things for me. I want you to like us, subscribe to us, leave comments, and share us. Do those 4 things. We'll be so happy that you did. And also, if you'd like for us to announce anything of yours that you're having, send us an email to straighttalknews1362@gmail.com. That's straighttalknews1362@gmail.com. And we're going to see you right back here next time. And in the meantime, in between time, may the Lord God bless you real good. Bye.
Yes. May the Lord God bless you. Bless you real good, Shannon. Bless you. Bless you.
And like us, subscribe, share, and comment, and all that stuff.
And all of that. Listen, Miss C is something else. Now she saw Bible study. We do Bible study, my wife and I, in the kitchen. We used to have Bible study around the kitchen table when we were coming up. You had to say a Bible verse. You had to say a Bible verse. Your grace before you eat, a Bible verse. Everybody around the table had to say a Bible verse. You couldn't keep saying Jesus wept. You had to have another.
Don't I know it? My brother Tony, by the time we get our food, it will be cold. That big road didn't know none of the Bible.
But those kinds of things that we used to do that kept us to be morally straight and have values, moral values, not wanting to take a life, because we know that our parents told us that if you can't give a life, God said if you can't give it, you can't take it, because God gives and then God takes away, right? So these values that we were raised up on, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, those were values that were instilled in us as kids, and now we have them as adults. But those values are not being passed on. Respect those in authority, respect our teachers, respect our preachers, respect the elders of the community. Those things were being taught and instilled in us as young people. But today, what we see is a whole different dynamic. And Shannon, we're going to talk about that because we want to talk about this thing about doing away with law enforcement officers. I know people are all in an uprage because of what happened in Memphis, and it was a tragedy. It shouldn't have happened. But if those officers had been raised or instilled, because all of them was about the same age as the young man who they killed, or they'd been instilled that thou shalt not kill, that you can't give a life, don't take a life, especially when it's not deserving, when it's not needed. But, things happen, and people have to suffer the consequences for their actions. So, but to do away with the police, I'm certainly not for that, Shannon. I'm not for that. I want to hear your opinion.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think that we've always had, we've always had law enforcement to serve and to protect. But the car doesn't say to kick you and break your neck. So I had an interesting conversation with the Fulton County this week after he after he decided to remove his name of Scorpion Unit. I called him and I commended him on that. But then we had some dialogue and talk. Well, you know, it's not titles and names that killed Tyree Brooks. That killed Mike Brown. It's an overreach of power and authority. It's ignoring training or executing bad training that would have caused that. So we talk about reform. We're not talking about getting rid of it, but how can we work to strengthen that unit? He let it be known that you know, that he's always looking at the training and making sure that all of his operate at an elite level and that they respect the training and they always retooling and whatnot. And he said that if his deputy adhere to their training, they have no better friend than the sheriff. But if they abuse their power and dishonor the badge that they wear, the code they have, and the ideology of office, he said they would have no worse than Sheriff Patrick LaBatte. I respect that. I think that's the kind of, first of all, this is the kind of dialogue that we need to have in his clergy and his community with the officers. And he was willing to have that with me. And I think that to be able to take that response, if we're going to have accountability, is absolutely important.
That I want to say, I don't know if they still do it, but years ago, before you could become a law enforcement officer, you had to go through a psych eval to make sure that you had the temperament or the ability to do the job from a psychological test. And many people who took those tests did not get to be law enforcement officers because they found them to be unfit to be able to carry a gun and to be in a badge, right? So I don't know if they're still doing that. I don't know if they're still doing the lie detector test. I don't know what they're still doing because I don't know how they recruit now. I know that when we look at the applications, they're trying to get officers. Every department is trying to find officers. Every department, the sheriff department, the police department in every city, every county, because they're short on people. I was listening to the governor of Pennsylvania last night, and I caught a quick interview of him when he was talking about what he is proposing to do there is to have a statewide certification of all officers, making sure that if those officers worked in one department and they were terminated or they resigned in lieu of being fired because of some action, excessive force action, or some action that was improper, that would be something that every law enforcement office would know when they were behind that office, because many times many officers, and I'm recalling of an officer that was in Savannah, was an officer someplace else, but he got a job at the Savannah airport years ago, and they found out after he had committed the same thing to a citizen that he had done while he was an officer in some little small town, that they hired him, but they didn't know about his background, what he had previously done. So these kinds of things, I think that will help with reform when you have a national, not just statewide, but a national-wide database that when people apply for office jobs in law enforcement and they've been previously in another department, then that person have their record not just from the department, but from the individual who certified them, like the state certification that they have to have, right? To be peace officer, right? So then they would have that information that other agencies, wherever in the United States, would know that this is a good officer, he did a great job, or he had some problems. Because when we look at some of the things that we see some of these officers have done, not just one time, not just two times, but several times, but have been reprimanded and they're still on the force. And then if they're allowed to leave and resign under their, themselves, then they go to another department and carry that same attitude in that other department. So I think that's a good thing, Shannon, in terms of reform. I think that's a good thing. When we talk about reform, because we need police. Let's not play with that. Now, we need police. We need public safety. We need that. We do, especially in this climate today. We need public safety. But I agree with you that we need reform, but we need to have the right kind of reform.
I think that when we talk about, in the middle of the George Floyd movement, there was a defund movement that kind of grew, and that defund movement kind of grew from a kind of Marxist, communist, anti-government sentiment that married itself to black pain and aggravation about instances of unfair policing and what some would call over policing in African American communities primarily, but in brown communities as well. I think that one of the calls for that, so that was the language they were using in defund. They meant a reallocation of monies. What I would call for is not necessarily a reallocation of money, but more funding, federal, or well, let's just say that. Let's keep with that, so we're not raising too much black. Let's talk about a redistribution of funds so that you can have a good amount of mental health professionals that are trained. I'm a police chaplain, volunteer police chaplain, and I work with that that allows me to interface with law enforcement and community at the same time to be a bridge. So I love that, being able to work with that capacity. But just as departments either need to have clergy to work with and educators, I think that mental health professionals are needed as well, especially when you go into situations where a mental health professional who's trained as an officer, right? So you're trained as an officer, but you're not a police officer as much as you are there to reinforce the officers and to kind of be a bridge between the issue of the mental health issue that's occurring and the officers dealing with their responsibility of providing law and order situation or circumstance that's going on. So I think that I think that we do need to have those who can come in at many times and say, okay, this issue is not going to, this person is not going to adhere to all of your command because this person is in a mental health crisis. And so there needs to be a unit to deal with that. Now, do all departments have it within their wherewithal to be able to afford that? No. But the training can be there and to be able to recognize that and to know how to deal with something. If you're dealing with someone with a severe mental health issue and you're giving them verbal commands, they're not hearing those commands in the same way that someone who is not dealing with mental health or mental illness is hearing. And so, it's the way that we just think about. We're not saying get rid of police, and we're not saying be soft on crime, because I don't commit crimes. You don't commit crimes, but there are people who would disenfranchise you and disenfranchise me, and I want those crimes dealt with, and I don't want them in our community, and I want to see them dealt with in our community and in the larger community. So we're not saying that, but we're saying let's retool and rethink about how we deal with all this instead of just going cookie cutter. This is the one way we're going to deal with every situation because that is proven to be catastrophic in many situations. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. I'm talking weird.
No, you're not getting feedback here. It's probably on your end. It's probably on your end. But anyway, this is what I do want to say as we continue this conversation around law enforcement, and I'm urging all clergy that's listening today to start getting involved in what's going on with law enforcement and what's going on in your community where you pastor, to understand and identify people in the community. You know, I was looking at that special last night about Las Vegas and how they had how it was created, you know, in the desert, and how the blacks, and we're moving in Black History Month now, and how the blacks were on one side, on the west side, and you know, and when entertainers came to town, black entertainers, they couldn't stay in the hotels. They could perform there, but they couldn't sleep there. They couldn't eat there, and they had to leave and go back to the black community and live in someone's house, a boarding house that they had for entertainers. And I was looking at that, but one of the things that the lady said that it was very, very, very profound how our community used to be. When we were segregated, not integrated, but we were segregated, the black community would take care of its own community. It would police its community. It would take care of the kids in that community. Everything was contained in that community, and it was controlled by that community, right? That was the black community. Now that we have integrated, we don't care about the community anymore. The community is not, whatever y'all doing over there, y'all doing. Whatever y'all doing over there, y'all doing. Until it becomes a problem for the community, then now everybody is all in rage. You know, you know who the drug dealers are. You know who the criminals were. They knew who the number runners were in the community back in the day. They knew who the bootleggers were back in the community back in the day. They knew, because the community knew what was going on in the community, and they kept it contained in the community. So there was no foolishness in the community, because you had Big Mama and you had Miss Louise, them who sit on the porch and said, boy, going on down the street, y'all stop that fighting. Now we ain't gonna have that foolishness over here with y'all. You ain't gonna be cussing when you go past this house. You ain't gonna be doing this. You ain't gonna be doing. Some people can relate to that because that was our community. That was our community. We controlled our own community. But now people don't care about the community anymore. They do not care about the community. So when we have police officers, the police officers used to have what they call officer friendly. Officer friendly knew everybody in the neighborhood. He or she, they knew people. They would speak to people. They would talk to people. They would find out what was going on in the community. We don't engage anymore. We allow things to happen until they get to the boiling point. Then we want to call the police in. And then when the police come in and start beating heads and doing things, then we mad with the police. Then we upset with them. But we could have stopped it and nipped it in the bud if we had dealt with it on the front end and not on the back end. So we need law enforcement. We need to have a community, back to the community, not just talking about the community, because they say it take a village to raise a child. It take a village to raise that community, because it's all about the village. It's all about the village and the people who live and reside in that village. So, you know, I just think that we as ministers, we need to start getting back to that and looking out for what's in the community, not just for our building that's in the community, but the community as a whole where the builder resides. Because you may not live in that community, but you have a building where people come to worship God in that community. So please, let's start paying more attention, listen to what's going on, and seeing how we can partner with our local police in our community where our church house lies. And
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I might keep going on. When we get back to that, I think that we'll move back to the place where we used to be. Now, I do want to stop here in a little bit to talk about this Black Lives Matter movement and Mr. Trump. And I think it's important that we share that in terms of this Marxist theory and the people who are leading the Black Lives Matter. And what is that Marxist theory, and how young people are buying into that and don't believe in God and don't go to church anymore because they're following and don't know they're following the theory of communism. So I'm going to let you talk about that, elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, let me preface this, because I don't want someone to misunderstand what you're saying. When we chant Black Lives Matter, absolutely, it's true. Black lives do matter, and have always mattered. I've always struggled in this country. And if you study the timeline of our history in America from really post 1619 to now, I don't know if you can still hear me. I don't hear the feedback anymore. Can you hear me, Bishop?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay. From 1619 to 2023, our story has been always screaming that our lives matter. Aren't we a human? Aren't we an American as well? Blacks fought in the Revolutionary War, and we fought in every war that this country has ever had. So we have always maintained the actual, not only the notion, but the mantra that our lives matter, that Black lives matter. But when you study the founding of the Black Lives Matter movement, you'll see that we're talking about the shift in African American culture, which really predates Black Lives Matter. We'd have to go all the way back to the Great Society of LBJ, where we start to see the dismantling and deconstruction of the African American community as the welfare system moves in, fathers are moved out of community, and so our communities, our families are women-led families, and these mothers are struggling to take care of their children and raise their boys under government mandate, and boys and girls under government mandate that says that a father cannot be home if you're receiving this level of aid. So to further break that down, you'll have maybe a young lady in the house who says, "Mom, I'm sick of, dealing with you, this, that, and the other. I'm ready to go out and be on my own." So the Great Society had programs that said that a 16-year-old girl could leave her home, excuse me, and she could get an apartment, and she could get all kinds of aid. But she would just have to, the thing would have to be that she would have to have children in order to receive that aid. So the more children, the more aid you get. So, excuse me. So you begin to have a system that is wealth without income. So income being earned wealth that comes from working. Wealth without income is state-given finances based on how many children you have, and the fact that you don't have a man in the home. And so the state becomes the other partner in this relationship. So then we start to see from the 1960s on, we began to see the Black Power movement, and you began to see the destruction of the African American community, and the war on poverty, the war on drugs, and you see the dismantling of that. Now, fast forward to Michael Brown being killed, and then George Floyd, and the emergence of a movement entitled Black Lives Matter. And the three young ladies that lead this movement are Marxists, and they are trained Marxists, trained by a gentleman by the name of Eric Mann, who was one of the training philosophical founders, a white man named Eric Mann, of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, the issue with Marxism is that Marxism is, Karl Marx, founder of Marxism, was anti-God, anti-government, and anti-personal property. So when we began to move into a Marxist movement, Marxist in its ideology, whereas Dr. King had a movement that was based on a movement of faith and God-given rights, and the imago Dei, the image and likeness of God. That how could you do this to someone who's created in God's image, as you as oppressor are also created in the image and likeness of God? So you began to move in an ideology that is not rooted in a faith tradition, but it's rooted in a Marxist tradition, which begins to deconstruct the notion of government, the notion of one's personal property, and the notion of God. And that becomes very very dangerous. And this is a larger conversation than just being able to say things here. But then that becomes the ideology. And so then we began raging against the machine. And so at the end of the day, what do you want? Do you want police? No, we don't want police. I saw a sign the other day that said abolish police. Like, we don't want police. We want in Georgia, we've got in Atlanta, we've got this justice training center that they call Cop City. We don't want that. We don't want law and order. And we want really a socialist view where everybody will receive the same thing. It's interesting, though, who doles that out? Who gives that? If we're anti-government, then we're anti-state. So then who does that? So it becomes something that we really need to look at ideologically. Is where we're moving. Are we moving away from the traditions, the African American tradition of faith and family and community, and moving into something else, and being usurped into something else that is not germane to who we have been and what our soldiers have been?
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. But that's a long conversation. And at some point, Shannon, we probably have a panel of people that kind of just talk about that, because as we have Mr. Trump, who is trying to run for president again, after all the things that he's done, alleged to have done, and some of them we know that he did do, because he's trying to move us to that Marxist theory in terms of communism, where we have a dictator who would dictate, to your point is, who would dictate all those things as to how our life would be and who would do what and how it would be done, and it would be done by, said and done by a dictator. So we don't be talking more about that.
Well, Trump would fight you on that, because he's an unabashed capitalist. And so so there might be some Marxism in his capitalism. Strange as that would be. But Karl Marx fought against capitalism.
But let me just say something. He's a capitalist, but if he's in control of the capital, why would he be opposed to that? But that's my opinion on that. I think he would be totally for that, because he's going to be the one controlling the capital, and who gets the capital. If he is in control, he's in control of everything. So, but anyway, we thank you so much for sharing today. It's Black History Month, and we got some Black History facts coming up next week. We're going to have Councilwoman Keisha Waite. She's going to come in and talk about her proposal or plan for curfew for young people to be in the homes at a certain time. And we'll be talking to her about that. And we thank you so much for being a part of Straight Talk. Don't forget, you can go out to Straight Talk. We did right then, Shannon. We refused not to fight. We crossed that bridge, we got beaten, we went to jail, and many lost their lives to give us the right to vote. And on that note, we thank you. We thank you. We thank our producer, what's her name? Oh, Connie, Miss Connie. We thank Miss Connie for our producer.
Better get that right.
Oh, let's get that right. That's Miss.
Oh, we won't be on the air next week.
Look at. We got two Miss C's. We got a Miss Connie and a Miss C.
Yeah.
Hey, until next week.
See what I mean?
Until next week, you tune in to nothing but what? Straight Talk, and don't forget to share it with your family and your friends.